Jumbo, and welcome to the Tejas Storytelling Association's conference. This is our second youth concert. Oh, and if you missed yesterday, oh, I'm sorry for you, but we have a great treat for you today. We had wonderful storytellers yesterday. Our youth storytellers were great, and we have even some more today. Now, these youth come from all over the state and out of the state. They are the future of Tejas. So let's sit back, get ready to hear their story.
My name is Aria Egypt, and I am in the 7th grade. Today, I'm going to be telling the story of a little pig that came to the rescue. Mr. and Mrs. Watson once had a little pig named Mercy Watson, and Mercy was their prized possession. She even got her very own lullaby that went something like this. Oh, my dear Mercy, my dearest Mercy. Oh, my dear Mercy, Mr. and Mrs. Watson sang every night, and every night Mercy heard that song. She felt warm inside, like she had just eaten toast with a great deal of butter on it. Mercy loves toast with a great deal of butter on it. It's her favorite snack. However, all that warmness is taken away from Mercy as soon as the lights are switched off in Mercy's room. She becomes so scared that one night she was tired of being scared of the dark. So she decided to hop off her bed, started walking towards her door, opened the door, and went right into her parents' room and lay right in the middle of the bed between Mr. and Mrs. Watson. Now, the Watsons were so busy dreaming that they didn't even realize something so terrible, something so tragic, something so bad was about to happen. But Mercy was very busy dreaming about one thing, and one thing only, and that was toast with a great deal of butter on it. But soon, Mercy was just tired of dreaming about it, so she woke up and boom! Crack! There was a large, loud sound. Mr. and Mrs. Watson both woke up, looked at each other, and screamed for their dear life. Mrs. Watson first said, "Oh, my dear heavens, what is going on here?" "Hold on, Mrs. Watson. Let me take a look." They both looked down from the bed, and that's when they saw a large hole right under the bed. Mr. Watson quickly turned to Mrs. Watson and said, "If you move, the hole will become bigger, and we will fall right through the ceiling, right into the living room. We shall not let that happen, so do not move." "Well, if I'm not allowed to move, how am I supposed to breathe? This isn't fair." Mr. and Mrs. Watson both started bickering as to what to do next, and Mercy was just tired of it all, so she decided to just hop off the bed to maybe find something good to eat. And so she did exactly that. Boom! Crack! The hole became bigger. Mrs. Watson screamed, "Ah!" They both looked at each other and screamed, "Ah!" But that's when they realized their pig daughter made it off the bed safely. They both looked at Mercy and said, "Mercy, go save us! Get help!" "Yes, indeed, Mercy, darling. I know you can save us. Go save the world, Mercy." But Mercy was too hungry to listen. She hopped down to the kitchen and sniffed, but she couldn't find anything good to eat. So she started thinking, where could she get a midnight snack? And that's when she remembered the old Lincoln sisters. Now, the old Lincoln sisters are the next door neighbors. The oldest sister, Regina, well, has opinions of her own. Oh my goodness, pigs are so, totally gross. I don't even know why I have to live right next to one. Should they be on farms or something? Ew. Ugh. But Mercy was a pig after all and really didn't mind. She started hopping towards the Lincoln sisters' house, and that's when Regina caught Mercy. Regina quickly whipped out her phone, called the fire department, and said, "Hello, I'm Regina Lincoln, and I have a pig here on my property. Get here as soon as possible, otherwise I am literally going to die." And the next thing you know, the fire department was right outside of the Lincoln sisters' house. The firefighters got out of their truck and took a nice look at Mercy and determined Mercy was no threat of any kind. But that's when they heard yelling coming from right next door. They quickly brought their fire truck all the way to the Watsons' house and brought down Mr. and Mrs. Watson safely. Mr. Watson had the first word and said, "Yes, our daughter saved the world. She saved our family. We love you, Mercy Watson. Indeed, we do, Mercy. Oh, you little darling, you must be parched and hungry. So here is toast with a great deal of butter on it for you, Mercy." Now, as for Mercy, she got her toast with a great deal of butter on it. Mr. and Mrs. Watson were safe, and Regina still had to live right next door to Mercy Watson. But that was the story of Mercy Watson to the rescue. Thank you.
The title of my story is Classic Summer. It started off at 6 a.m. early, to be exact. My mother was a 2016 Olympic hopeful. We journeyed from Texas to Oregon, a beautiful 31-hour drive. The morning was bright. The evenings were warm. The nights were dark. She tells us to walk by faith and not by sight. So we learned to pray. For entertainment, my brother and I brought our favorite toys. This is my favorite toy. One morning, we started out on the road. The sky was blue, the sun was bright, and the wind was strong. I thought to myself, this is it. Time for fresh air. With my mom's permission, I rolled down my window. The wind felt soft on my brown skin. Okay, here, your turn. I had my favorite toy. I looked out the window, I looked at my mom, and I looked at my brother. I thought to myself, my toy should get some fresh air. So I stuck my toy out the window, and it flew out of my hand. I sighed and said, what a classic summer.
We have our youngest tellers today, Zion and Zakura, and they're going to tell you how old they are, and they have a special treat for you. So take it away, Zion and Zakura.
I am 6 years old. I am 5 years old. And then I will be 6. Knock, knock. Who's there? Your sister. Your sister who? You mean you don't know me? Mine? I have to do 2. And I thought I have to do 1. You have to do 1. Knock, knock. Who's there? Cal says. What? Cal says. Pink. Thank you. He didn't say knock, knock. You're welcome. Knock, knock. Who's there? Cal. Cal said too. He's getting confused.
And we thank you guys very, very much for your very, very first storytelling performance. Thank you again.
Hi, my name is Phoebe Veckelheimer. I'm in 8th grade and I live in Laredo, Texas. Today I'm going to be telling you a Latin American folktale retold by Marianne Blue. It was a time of great famine, and all the small animals didn't have anything to eat. Señor Tigre, the tiger, had eaten up everything he could get his claws on. Tío Conejo, the rabbit, was so hungry his stomach kept him awake all night growling. He had to get some food. Then he thought of it. Señor Tigre's big white cheeses, quesos grandes y blancos, the ones that he sells at the mercado on market days. Tío Conejo was smart, and he was quick, and he knew how he could get Señor Tigre's cheeses. He ran down to the market road, the one that Señor Tigre had to take to get to the market, and he lay down on the road like he was a dead rabbit. Se acostó en el camino como un conejo muerto. Down the road came Señor Tigre. He saw the dead rabbit on the road, stopped, and grinned a big tiger grin. Un conejo muerto, a dead rabbit, he ought to taste pretty good. Debe ser delicioso. I'll pick him up on my way back home. And he kept on walking down the road. As soon as he was out of sight, Tío Conejo jumped up, took a shortcut, and got ahead of Señor Tigre on the road. He lay down again like he was a dead rabbit. Se acostó en el camino como un conejo muerto. Down the road again came Señor Tigre. He saw the second dead rabbit on the road. Un conejo muerto? Dos conejos muertos. They will make me a fine rabbit stew. Un guisado de conejo sabroso. I'll pick him up on my way back home too. And he kept on walking down the road. As soon as he was out of sight, Tío Conejo jumped up, took another shortcut, and got ahead of Señor Tigre on the road. He lay down again like he was a dead rabbit. Se acostó en el camino como un conejo muerto. Around the bend came Señor Tigre, dreaming about his fine rabbit stew. He thought he'd open his own restaurant. He'd call it Señor Tigre's Roadkill Cafe. When Señor Tigre saw the third dead rabbit on the road, he lost all control. Otro conejo muerto. I'm going to eat those rabbits right now. Voy a comer estos conejos ahora mismo. And he threw down his cheeses and went running back to get the other two dead rabbits. As soon as he was out of sight, Tío Conejo jumped up, grabbed those cheeses, y se fue como una chispa. He was out of there. Tío Conejo, he lay low for the rest of the afternoon, hiding from Señor Tigre. But when it got dark, he took those cheeses. He found a nice big rock, propped up his feet, and took a big bite out of one of those cheeses. Tío Conejo wasn't paying any attention. But you know who came sneaking up behind him? You guessed it. El gato malo y tonto, Señor Tigre. Okay, Tío Conejo, I've caught you now, and I'm going to eat you up, 'cause you took my cheeses. Cálmate, Señor Tigre. Just calm down. A big, fine cat like you, carrying on like this over a couple of little old cheeses? Son quesos chiquitos. They are little cheeses. Mira en el río. Look out there in the river. The biggest cheese of them all is floating out there in the river. And he pointed to the light of the moon shining down on the river. Oh, tú tienes razón. Si tienes un queso muy grande. It sure is big. I know it's big. I was just about to jump out there and get it for myself when you sneaked up behind me and scared me half to death. Oh, espérate un momento. You just wait a minute, Tío Conejo. I deserve that cheese, 'cause you took my cheeses, mis quesitos blancos. Oh, Señor Tigre, I love the way your mind works. I think you do deserve that cheese. Go on, jump out there and get it. Go on, ándale. I can't exactly do that.
You can't exactly do that. Why not? ¿Por qué no? What's the matter, Señor Tigre? Can't you swim?
Not exactly.
Not exactly. Oh, Señor Tigre, this is your lucky day because I, Tío Conejo, am a world-class swimming instructor. I can teach you everything you need to know about swimming.
Okay.
Just stand here on the riverbank right next to the water. I'm going to count to 3 and give you a big push. You jump out there as far as you can. Just grab hold of that cheese. That queso grande will keep you floating.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Adiós, señor tigre. Y tío conejo se fue como una chispa. He was out of there. Señor Tigre was coughing. He was sputtering. He was trying to get that cheese. He knew he'd been tricked again by Tío Conejo. Lucky for Señor Tigre, a log floated by. He grabbed onto it to stay afloat, and he floated down the river. At last, when he looked up, he saw Tío Conejo up on the riverbank, just laughing, holding his sides. He shook one big tiger paw.
Tío Conejo, algún día te pescaré. Tú eres un conejo muerto.
But Tío Conejo se fue como una chispa. Some say that tiger's still out there, that somewhere in that thick green Latin American jungle lurks a slow, dull-witted, big cat with a bad temper. El gato malo y tonto. Others say that you can hear Tiger as he runs through the forest yelling for Tío Conejo.
Tío Conejo, algún día te pescaré. Someday I'm going to catch you. You are one dead rabbit. Tú eres un conejo muerto.
But you'll never hear Tío Conejo answer back. He's nowhere to be found. Tío Conejo se fue como una chispa. He was out of there. Thank you.
I'm Sinai McGrew. Today I'll be telling you 2 stories. The first one is a short fable called The Crow and the Pitcher. Once there was a crow who every day passed over this super hot field on his way home from work. But one day he was exhausted from work and decided to rest. He ended up landing in that super hot field. He sat for a while, and at first it felt nice. Then he started to get thirsty because it was so hot. So he decided to look for something to drink, maybe some water. Over in the distance, he saw a pitcher. He flew over and looked down, and he saw some water. He stuck his beak in the pitcher. But his beak was too short. He couldn't reach the water. He even tried to wiggle his tongue around. But he couldn't get it. So he thought, and he thought some more. He was a very smart bird. So he knew when he saw those pebbles over in the distance, if he put one in the pitcher, it might rise. He picked one up and dropped it in the pitcher. It worked. It started to rise. He took the rest of the pebbles and put them in the pitcher as well. 1, 2, all the way until the pitcher was filled to the brim with water. He drank and drank and drank, and he was finally energized enough to go home and see his family. The moral of this story is to never give up. My next story for you all is Salt the Pudding. Once there was a town who every year had this amazing feast. It was filled with delicious food. It was filled with steaks and salad. What else do you think? Well, let me tell you, they were some good eats. Every year, this food was hosted and cooked by Mrs. Washington and her family. Mrs. Washington was the best cook you would ever meet. She made the most delicious food. And she also made this super special pudding. It was chocolate and vanilla. It had fresh fruit, and on top with whipped cream and cherry on top. Delicious. Well, finally, it was the day of the feast. The entire Washington house was prepping. Mrs. Washington and Mr. Washington had 13 amazing but lazy daughters. They never did any work. Well, while Miss Washington was cleaning and cooking at the same time, she had completely forgot to put a special ingredient in that pudding of hers. I bet you can't guess. Well, if you guess salt, then you are correct. She always put a pinch of salt in her pudding with her fingers. But her fingers were super dirty from dusting. So she decided to ask one of her daughters so she wouldn't have to waste the time of washing her hands and then getting them dirty all over again. She asked her oldest daughter, "Please, can you please help your mom come salt the pudding?" "Can't, Mom. I'm shining my shoes." What a lame excuse, right? She just asked her next daughter, "Sierra, can you please help your mom salt the pudding?" "Can't, Mom. I'm painting my nails." She asked the rest of her daughters, and guess what? They also had horrible excuses. So she decided to just wash her hands and do it herself. Finally, it was feast time, and everybody was there. And I mean everybody. From the librarian to the mailman. Even the mayor was there. Can you guess who else was there? Well, let me tell you, there were a lot of people. Everyone ate and ate that delicious steak, that delicious salad, all of that good food. And finally, it was time for that chocolate and vanilla, fresh fruit, whipped cream, and cherry on top pudding. Everyone wanted some, but since the mayor was, well, the mayor, she got the first big helping. Everyone else rushed up to the pan to get some for themselves. Everyone took a huge bite all together. They all started making weird faces and coughing. Mrs. Washington was appalled. "Why are you guys coughing? What are those faces for? My pudding is horrible." She decided to take some pudding and try it for herself. "Ew, this is horrible. What could have happened? I made it perfectly." She thought and thought, and she remembered that she had asked her daughters earlier to help her salt the pudding. She just had to ask, "Louise, did you help your mom salt the pudding?" "Yes, Ma. I had to. I mean, you helped me with my homework." "Okay, 2 pinches of salt is not nearly enough." She asked her other daughter, "Sierra, did you?" "Yes, Mom. Sorry, but I just had to. You did make my costume." She asked the rest of her daughters, and they also did it, all because they felt sorry for their poor mom. Miss Washington laughed and laughed. She said, "The lesson of today. The lesson is, too many cooks in the kitchen can spoil the broth. Well, in this case, the pudding." Thank you.
Hello, I'm DAVID, and I'm going to tell you the story of Ashes for Sale. Once, in a small village in Mexico, there were 2 men, Pedro and Naldo. Naldo, he was a trickster, but Pedro, well, let's just say he wasn't quite so bright. One day, Naldo was heading to town with what was obviously a big bag of flour when he met Pedro. "What's that?" asked Pedro. "Ah, this is a big bag of ashes. Haven't you heard? The people in the town, they say they love ashes from our little village. They say it makes their plants grow huge, their garden, vegetables. It just does wonders. They can't get enough of our ashes." Well, the next day, Pedro went and collected all the ashes from his fireplace. He had a big bag of ashes, and he slung them over his shoulder and headed to town to sell them. He got to town and started calling, "Ashes for sale." And you can help with this. "Ashes for sale. Ashes for sale." Do you think anybody bought any of his ashes? Well, no. I mean, would you buy a bag of ashes? Well, he kept calling, ashes for sale, ashes for sale. But finally, it was getting dark and he sat down on a bench. Nobody will buy my ashes. Just then a little boy came up. I'll buy you ashes. I'll trade them for this devil's mask. My parents say I can't take it in the house because it's too scary. But I think maybe I could say I bought flour, and when they see it's really ashes, they'll think the mask cursed it. It'll be so funny. Okay. And Pedro, he took that mask. It fit well, and it was a scary mask. Stuck it in his pocket and started to head home. By now, it had gotten very dark. And before he'd gotten far, he saw a little fire off in the woods. Thought, maybe they'll let me spend the night there. It's a long way back to my village. Went up. There were 3 men around the fire. And he asked if he could spend the night. They agreed. And soon, they were sound asleep. Just then, whoo, whoo, whoo. What did they hear? That's right, an owl. Now Pedro'd been taught that owls meant bad things were going to come. So he put that mask on to scare away any evil spirits. Just then the other 2 men woke up and sat up, and who was sitting next to them? The devil. They backed up, and Pedro said through the mask, "This is only a mask." But with the mask, it sounded like, "This is your last." And those men, they took off and did not come back that night. Well, Pedro went back to sleep. And in the morning, he woke up to find 3 big bags of treasure behind one of the trees. For those men, they were not regular men. They were robbers. But he didn't know that. He took those bags of treasure and headed back to his village. When he got back, who do you think he met? Naldo. You were right, Naldo. You were right. They love our ashes. Look at the bags of treasure I got. Look how much they paid for them. Next day, Naldo didn't just clean out his fireplace. He cleaned out all the fireplaces on his street. And he didn't just have 1 bag of ashes, he had a cartload of ashes. He took those to town, and, well, let's just say Pedro never saw him again. Perhaps he was too embarrassed to have been fooled by a fool. Next up are our tandem tellers.
My name is Saya Meza.
And my name is Max Almendorf.
Lazy Jack.
Taken from a version by Mary Gay Ducey.
Once there was a little boy named Lazy Jack. And there's a reason they called him that. He was lazy. He'd spend the summers lying out in the meadow, smelling the sweet grasses and watching the sun cross the sky.
Things changed for Jack when the weather got colder. He came inside and curled up in front of the fire and asked his mama for some milk and apples. And often, she would oblige him. But not always.
Jack, I want you to get a job.
A what?
A job, Jack.
What's that, Mama?
Well, you go somewhere, work all day long, and at the end of the day, you're given something for your work.
No, Mama. I am happy just the way I am.
Jack, I know you can learn. Now I want you out of the house, and tomorrow.
Jack loved his mother as much as the next boy, so he did seek work the next day and found it at a farm. He spent all day working and thought it was the greatest fun. And at the end of the day, the farmer placed into Jack's hands 3 shiny coins.
Well, Jack had never had a need for money before, but as he crossed a brook, he decided to skip one of those coins, and it was gone. The second coin he threw up as high as he could, and had only 1 left.
I shall save this for my mama.
But then his hands began to sweat, and the coin slipped from his grasp. When he got home, he had nothing but the story to tell his mama. Jack, I know you can learn. That's not what you should have done with what you got. You should have taken the coins, slipped them in your pocket, and not taken them out until you got home.
Really? What a good idea, Mama. I'll remember that. That I will. The next day, Jack went to work for a dairy farmer, and he spent all day working with the farmer. At the end of the day, the dairy farmer placed into Jack's hands a tall jar of milk.
Well, Jack kind of remembered what his mother had told him to do. So he took that tall jar of milk, opened it up, and poured it down his pocket. He started walking home, and the milk started to trickle down his pant leg, to ooze into his shoes and sop up his socks. When he got home, his mother saw him and smelled him too. Jack, I know you can learn. That's not what you should have done with what you got. You should have taken the milk, put it on your head, and not taken it down until you got home.
Really? What a good idea, Mama. I'll remember that. That I will. The next day, Jack went to work for a cheesemaker and spent all day salting different types of cheeses. At the end of the day, the cheesemaker placed into Jack's hands a large, round cream cheese.
Well, Jack kind of remembered what his mother had told him to do. So he took that large, round cream cheese, plopped it on his head, and started walking home. The cheese simply sat there. But then the sun started to come out, and then the cheese started to stick to his hair and squish into his ears.
When he got home, his mother saw him.
Jack, I know you can learn. That's not what you should have done with what you got. You should have taken the cheese, wrapped it in wet green leaves, and held it out in front of you, and not putting it down until you got home.
Really? What a good idea, Mama. I'll remember that. That I will. The next day, Jack went to work for a butcher. He spent all day smelling different types of meat. And at the end of the day, the butcher placed into Jack's hands a large, fat tomcat.
Well, Jack had never owned a tomcat before, but he kind of remembered what his mother had told him to do. So he took that poor tomcat, wrapped it in wet green leaves, and held it from the tail and the ear. The cat laid there in shock. But then it started to get mad and started to bite and scratch Jack. When Jack got home, he was bitten and scratched. Jack, I know you can learn. That's not what you should have done with what you got. You should have taken the cat, tied some string around its neck, and dragged it along behind you.
Really? What a good idea, Mama. I'll remember that. That I will. The next day, Jack went to work for a bakery. He spent all day smelling the pies, the cakes, the muffins, and the scones. At the end of the day, the baker placed into Jack's hands a warm, tall, juicy ham leg.
Well, Jack kind of remembered what his mother had told him to do. So he took that piece of ham, tied some string around it, walked it behind him, started walking home. The ham laid there and skipped and tossed, but then it hit a mud puddle. Horrible! And then a pile of fire ants. Even worse. When Jack got home, the ham wasn't fit to eat. Jack, I know you can learn. That's not what you should have done with what you got. You should have taken the ham, put it on your shoulder, and not taken it down until you got home.
Really? What a good idea, Mama. I'll remember that. That I will. The next day, Jack went to work on a donkey train. He spent all day on the train. By the end of the day, he was too far to get back home. So he stayed the night. When he woke up, the train driver said to Jack, Jack, you're a fine lad. For this, I shall give you one of our finest donkeys.
Well, Jack kind of remembered what his mother had told him to do. So he took that fat, large donkey and tried his best to hoist it up onto his shoulders. And he started walking home.
What Jack didn't know is that in the next town over, there lived the daughter of a very rich man who had been known in all her life to never have laughed. She sat there that day, sitting as she did all the others, sighing and looking again.
But she saw an astonishing sight. It wasn't a man riding a donkey, but a donkey riding a man.
And then a small sound escaped her. And then another, and then a real laugh. Bring that young man to me, said the father, for I offered a fortune to anyone who could make my daughter laugh.
Well, this time, Jack remembered just what his mother had told him to do. So I took those 2 big bags of gold and hoisted him up on his shoulders.
When Jack got home, his mother saw him.
Jack, I knew you could learn.
Ever since that day, Jack used the money to buy his mama a new house and food for the both of them for the rest of their lives.
Nobody called him Lazy Jack anymore. They called him Mr. Jack.
And he always remembered what his mother tells him to do.
Hi, my name is Aaron Ferreira, and I will be telling you the story of No Dinner by Jessica Sahari. There once lived a little old lady that lived at the edge of the forest. She was very old and frail and was only skin and bone. She longed to visit her granddaughter's house, but that meant she had to walk through the entire forest and see many mean and fierce animals. But nevertheless, she one day got on her journey, got her walking stick, told her dog goodbye, and went on her way to visit her granddaughter. On her walk, she had her walking stick help her out as it went, to-goo, 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 until out of nowhere, out jumped this wolf. Little old lady, I'm going to eat you up. Very well, said the old lady, but look at me, I'm all skin and bone. Why don't you eat me when I come back from my granddaughter's house? Well, I'll be nice and fat. The wolf thought about it for a second and went, very well, but don't take too long, because I'm hungry. And the old lady, once again, went on her way as her walking stick helped her out and went, to-goo, 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 until out jumped this bear. Little old lady, I'm going to eat you up. Very well, said the old lady, but look at me, I'm all skin and bone. Why don't you eat me when I come back from my granddaughter's house? Well, I'll be nice and fat. The bear thought and went, very well, but don't take too long, because I'm hungry. And so the old lady went off once again, walking as her walking stick went, to-goo, 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 until out of nowhere, out jumped this big tiger. Little old lady, I'm going to eat you up. Very well, said the old lady, but look at me, I'm all just skin and bone. Why don't you eat me when I come back from my granddaughter's house? Well, I'll be big and fat. The tiger thought and went, very well, but don't take too long, because I'm hungry. And so the old lady went once again, walking as her walking stick went, to-goo, 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 until she finally reached the end of the big forest and found her granddaughter's house. There, she was greeted by this enormous feast full of many delicious foods, and she ate and ate and ate until she got big and fat. Grandma, said the granddaughter, if you eat one more bite, you're going to blow. The old lady laughed. Very well, but now that means all the animals in the big forest want to eat me. How can I get back home safe? The granddaughter thought and went, I have a great idea. And she took her to the backyard where there was this enormous pumpkin. How about I put you inside this pumpkin, put the lid on, and then push you so none of the animals can see you? And the granddaughter thought and said, yeah, we can do that. What do you think? The grandmother agreed. And so she helped her grandmother get inside the pumpkin, waved her goodbye, put the lid on, and pushed her off. The pumpkin now went on rolling and rolling and rolling throughout the big forest until out jumped the tiger. Pumpkin, have you seen a little old lady around here? No, said the pumpkin. I'm just a pumpkin here, rolling around, minding my own business. I've never heard of an old lady. Darn it, said the tiger. No dinner. And the pumpkin went off once again, rolling and rolling and rolling throughout the forest until out jumped the bear. Oh, lady, where have you seen this little old pumpkin around here? Oh, lady, pumpkin. I've never heard of that. I'm just a pumpkin here rolling around, minding my own business. The bear, being hungry, was kind of confused, and he said, darn it, no dinner. And the pumpkin went off once again, rolling and rolling and rolling, until out of nowhere, out jumped the wolf. Pumpkin, have you seen a little old lady around here? No, said the pumpkin. I'm just a pumpkin here, rolling around, minding my own business. I've never heard of a little old lady. Darn it, said the wolf. No dinner. But as though the wolf was about to walk off, it realized something. Wait a minute. I've never heard of a talking pumpkin. And the wolf went running to the pumpkin and lifted up the pumpkin's lid to find the little old lady's head popped out. Aha, I found you, and now I'm going to eat you up. Very well, said the old lady, but I must tell you, I did not get big and fat as I said. I'm still skin and bone. Prove it to me, said the wolf. I want you to take out a leg so I can feel it. The old lady didn't know what to do, but then she had a big idea. What if instead of her taking out her leg, she took out her walking stick? And so she did. She took out her walking stick for the wolf to feel, and he was not impressed. This isn't big and fat. This is all just skin and bone. I can't eat this. Darn it, said the wolf. No dinner. And in disgust, he pushed up the pumpkin off and walked away. And after that, the pumpkin went on, rolling and rolling and rolling until it reached the end of the big forest and was at her house. There, she got out of the pumpkin with her dog walking now, as she was now big and fat. And after that, she was able to live peacefully at the edge of the big forest with her dog, big and fat. And that is the end of the story. The end.
Once upon a time, in a tall, craggy mountain, there lived a family of trolls. Now, they were a royal family. There was the Queen Mother and her son Prince Peter. The Queen Father had long ago danced himself into a frenzy. On a night of excited bliss, he had rolled and rolled until he fell into a deep hole, never to return. For around 100 years, the mother and the son lived peacefully and ruled the kingdom. Queen Mother, I'd say she was around 500 years old and was already turning into limestone. It wouldn't be before long until she was a large limestone column deep into Troll Mountain. It wouldn't be long before Prince Peter would rule, and he'd be in need of a princess. Now, that shouldn't have been very hard, for Prince Peter was ugly beyond compare. He had a large, bulbous nose. He had warts covering the face with little hairs coming out. His teeth were black as rot, and others as square as cows' cuspids. Yes, he was truly loathsome, and Queen Mother knew that every princess would come courting. But she didn't want just any princess. She only wanted a true, warty, nubby mountain troll princess. So she decided to have a series of tests. The first test, she would lead all the princesses into the main hall. There they would sit in front of the mirror. And if it cracked, then they had passed the test. For only a mountain troll princess was ugly beyond compare. The second test was dinner with the family. If they remembered their trollish manners, and slopped and slurped and gobbled up their food, and after dessert they spit and burped, they'd be well on their way to winning the prince's hand in marriage. The third test was squeezing water from a rock. They had to be so strong, for only mountain princesses were that strong. They had to squeeze until actual water could come out. And for the fourth test, the hardest test of them all the princesses would fall asleep on large craggy boulders. Underneath, the queen mother would lay one single goose feather. If during the night they itched and scratched and squirmed, then they would pass the test and marry the prince. For only a mountain troll princess slept on hard, craggy boulders, and anything soft would drive them out of their mind. So on came the suitors. Unfortunately, most of them weren't even ugly enough to crack the mirrors in the front hall. Out they were sent with a swift kick to their behind. The second test, dinner with the family. Again, unfortunately, a lot of them were so nervous about impressing Prince Peter, they forgot all about their dinner manners. They would lay their napkin daintily on their laps instead of using them to blow their noses. They would chew and munch quietly instead of slopping and slurping their food. And after dinner, they forgot to burp. Out they were sent with an even swifter kick to their behind. Third test, squeezing water from a rock. But of course, no one could do that. All the strongest could do was squeeze the rock into a fine sand. Soon there were no suitors left. Prince Peter was destined to rule a long and lonely life. And then, late one evening, there came a hard knocking at the door. Prince Peter answered, and he just stared in shock and awe. There he saw the most ugly, most horrendous, hideous creature on earth he had ever seen. And she spoke with the most grinding, grating voice he had ever heard. I'm Princess Sweet Pea, and I'm here to win your hand in marriage. I'll go get Mother. And he ran inside the castle. Queen Mother stormed into the room. It was late, and she was tired of all the false suitors. Quickly, she led Princess Sweet Pea to the front hall of mirrors. My dear, you look tired from your mountainous climb. Why not you look into the mirror and freshen up a bit? No sooner had Princess Sweet Pea glared into the mirrors than they all broke, not one, but all of them, into thousands of tiny little pieces. Queen Mother was impressed, but also worried. She really was loathsome and ugly and hideous and horrendous, and she had ugly, swarming moss in her hair. But what was she doing with that? All mountain troll princesses decorated their hair with pine needles. So Queen Mother thought, I might as well skip to the next test and get this over. So while Princess Sweet Pea was grabbing a snack in the kitchen, Queen Mother stacked large craggy boulders on top of each other and laid a single goose feather underneath. Well, she came back to check on Princess Sweet Pea's manners, and oh, what a sight! Food was everywhere, drenching all the servants. Food had dribbled down her front, and she was there, snorting like a pig, right in the middle. And at the end, not only did she forget to burp, but she let out 3 horrendous, disgusting burps that blew out the torches in the main hall. Queen Mother was impressed, but she wanted to give her the rock test. Here, squeeze water out of this, and she handed Princess Sweet Pea a rock. No sooner had Princess Sweet Pea grabbed it and loosened the belt around her waist, there came water right out of the rock like it was nothing. The next morning, they heard a rumbling, and they saw Princess Sweet Pea grumbling and grouching, smashing stalagmites and stalagmites in her way, and she shouted, "What kind of hospitality is this? Last night's bed was so soft I have a backache, and when I tore apart the bed to see what was so soft, I found this!" And she stuffed the goose feather right up Queen Mother's nose. By this point, even Queen Mother had to admit that she was a mountain troll princess, despite her hair. They were wed the very next day. Prince Peter and Princess Sweet Pea were wed happily for a long, long time. And slowly, Queen Mother turned into a large column of limestone. And so, if you're ever to peer inside the cavernous castle, deep inside Troll Mountain, there's Queen Mother guarding and protecting the main hall. And if you're just to peer inside the royal bedchamber, you'll see Prince Peter snoring loudly on a bed of craggy boulders. And sitting next to him, snoring even louder, you'll see Princess Sweet Pea on a different bed altogether. For you see, she wasn't really a mountain troll princess. She was just an ordinary but clever bridge troll maiden. And how had she passed all those tests? It was simple. For you see, she really was ugly. And it wasn't easy to break the mirrors in one glance. She had to give them a hard, horrible stare before they all broke out of fear. The second test, dinner with the family, well, that came natural, for her bridge was right next to a pig farm after all. And the third test, squeezing water from a rock, well, that was just a simple illusion. For you see, Princess Sweet Pea always carried a pouch of wet moss underneath her belt. And so when she was loosening her belt, she really grabbed moss and hid it under the rock. And when she squeezed, water came out. And then the fourth test. That was the easiest of all. For on the night that Princess Sweet Pea had arrived, Prince Peter was so in love that he didn't care, bridge troll or not bridge troll. He wanted to marry her. And so he warned her about it that night. But he needn't have worried. Princess Sweet Pea really could feel that goose feather. She always slept on a bed of soft moss and knew how to enjoy real comfort. And that goose feather was the softest thing she had ever felt. So, if you're to peer inside the royal bedchamber, just past Prince Peter snoring loudly, you'll see Princess Sweet Pea snoring even louder on a bed of soft goose feathers. The end.
I'd like to say that you all were so amazing. I'm so proud of all of you.